Welcome to the Docket. My name is Bob Warwick. The Docket's a series of programs dealing with legal issues in our community, and we hope to be able to answer questions that you might have also. We've expanded the topic, though, to include organizations that aren't formally in the legal system, but help the courts out. Today I have two women as my guests. I've known both of them a very long time. One is Grace Ortiz, who has worked for APS, Adult Protective Services, for the past 17 years. And the other is my partner, Magda Soto, and we've worked together forever. So let's begin with Grace and let her tell us something about Adult Protective Service and what it does.
So thanks for inviting me, Bob. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. I'm going to tell you about Adult Protective Services today. It's a state agency that investigates cases of abuse, neglect, and exploitation for the elderly and persons with disabilities. Anybody over 65 and anybody between 18 and 64 that has a chronic disability.
And you work with the courts, correct?
Yes.
And you work with the courts in the area of protecting older adults.
So our job is to go in and review or investigate, let's just say, neglect. It's severe. And our job is to figure out if we can do least restrictive steps. We're going to try to figure out resources in the community, try to ensure that they stay home with dignity and respect. But there are those times where that individual is just not taking care of themselves. They're putting themselves in danger. Their capacity is now an issue. They really don't know what's going on around them. And it's not their fault. And so sometimes we do have to take an extra step, and we have to do that emergency order for protective services. Basically, we have to take them out of their home, take them to a medical facility, get them cleared, get a place for them to be at. And then, of course, we have to figure out how to get them to court, and will they need a guardian? Will they not? What is going to be the final determination of their future?
Well, let me take that. I'm going to talk about that a little more or more in depth later, but let me just talk to Magda for a second. Coming from the legal point of view, you've represented people on removals, is that right?
I have, and to kind of piggyback what Grace is saying, because I think it's so hard when you have to actually come to the reality that you can no longer take care of yourself. So when APS gets involved, it's pretty severe, and it's an elderly individual where they have to face the realization that unfortunately they aren't being taken care of. So from the attorney perspective, the ad litem, we're appointed to make sure that we're advocating for that individual, that all the supports are looked at, and worst case scenario, unfortunately, they will be removed. And as the ad litem, my job, of course, is to represent them and hopefully make sure that their rights are, of course, always respected, and it's always the least restrictive, whatever they're going to do with them.
Yeah, and removal must be, I mean, when we say removal, what we're talking about is removing them from their residence and putting them in some sort of environment where their safety will be protected. Is that correct?
Of course. So, and that's why it's always so hard, because you always want to stay in your home. And when somebody is coming in saying that we have to remove you, it is something very hard. So we have to be very delicate. I know when I go in and talk to them, I try to explain to them, this is for your benefit. And always, we need to make sure you're in a secure environment. So it is a hard subject, but of course they're doing it to protect them and making sure that all of their needs are met.
Well, I'm going to want to go through the entire legal process later in the program so people can understand the steps that are taken, how it begins, where it goes from an initial phone call, how you make that phone call, and so on. But there's some other things that APS does. I know you're on, what's the name of the board?
APS Silver Star Board.
The Silver Star Board. And you're active in that, Grace?
Yes, I'm the liaison to that board.
Okay. So tell us that's not the legal process right there. That's the supportive end of the community and the people on the board trying to help the APS as an organization and the APS workers. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the board, would you?
So the board has been in effect since, I guess you could say, 2004, around there. And it came together only for the fact that we were at a point where there's a lot of things that APS can't take care of. We can't pay for certain things. And this board was developed to support our mission, number one, to advocate, educate the community, and whatever the state can't pay for, if that board has been able to build funds, they pay for things for the client, which is a great thing.
So tell us about some of the things that the board does. I know that, I don't know if it comes from the board or not, but I know you do blankets in the winter, fans in the summer, to help people who don't have the resources to get those items. Is that right?
So they are partnered up with the Extreme Weather Task Force, and I'm the chair to that.
And when you say they are partnered up, you're talking about individuals in the community.
No, Adult Protective Services Silver Star Board, the APS Silver Star Board,
Okay.
they partner up with the Extreme Weather Task Force. And so our goal is to provide blankets in the winter and fans in the summer to the vulnerable in our community, which is the elderly, disabled, and small infant children. And so there are times when this organization, the Extreme Weather Task Force, doesn't have any funding. Everything's donation. Then the APS Silver Star Board will support it and purchase some of those needed items when there's extreme weather in our community.
How do you get, Magda, how do you get the funds to do that?
So everything is through donation. So we rely on the community to donate. And we also have things, I know we have a room, actually going off of what Ms. Grace was saying, things that people don't think about. So this elderly community, they need adult diapers, supplements for food. So we rely on the community. Right now, we're really pushing for donations. We're going through Facebook, media, and we're asking the community to really provide these donations because that's how we're able to provide these services for the community.
And I guess COVID has made all of this even more difficult. It's not easy fundraising in the best of times, but then throw COVID into it and it just makes it harder, correct?
It is actually, because one of our big fundraisers is we have a conference every year. And unfortunately, last year we were not able to have that conference. And this year it's via Zoom. So of course that big fundraiser is not part of our system. So we are relying on outreach and really trying to get the word out that we still need this money because we want to provide the services to the community and make sure that we always have that available because we're back up to APS to make sure that anything that they're not able to provide to the community, we are able to provide those services.
Who is the conference for? Is it for the community at large? Is it for social workers, lawyers?
It's for everybody, really.
Anybody can sign up.
Anybody can sign up because it's outreach to the community. So we want everybody to sign up. We have some great speakers and sign up. It's free, but anybody can sign up for the conference.
So if it's free, how do you raise money?
That's a hard thing.
So Bob, it's called the 13th Annual Crimes Against the Elderly Conference. We're going to ask the community to call 915-834-5743 to register.
Say it once more.
915-834-5743. Call it. Provide your email. We'll send you a special invite so you can register through a special link.
Perfect.
And the good thing is that it's something that anyone can listen to. It's pre-recorded. So at your leisure.
At your leisure, sure.
You can go and hear these from October through December 31st.
Do either of you know the topics yet?
I know some of them.
Some of them.
Some of them are going to be scams for seniors.
Legal planning.
Legal planning. There's going to be how to protect the vulnerable in our community, and that's going to be done by, I think, Eddie Castillo. So there's going to be everything, caregiver burnout and leading to abuse and neglect and exploitation, topics such as those.
So let me circle back for a minute. You say you provide fans and blankets and that sort of stuff through the Extreme Weather Task Force. How do you identify who needs that?
So those individuals will call 211 and they register. And I literally will call every individual and I'll tell you why, especially if they're seniors. I will call them and I'll ask them what else is going on.
Yeah.
Because usually you need something else is going on. And it's a win-win because if they tell me, I can't afford for a plumber to come and turn on my air for me or turn on my heater for me, I just can't afford it. That's neglect. Then I'll refer it over to Adult Protective Services. It'll become a case. And what we'll do is we'll pay for that plumber to turn on the air startup or the heater startup in the winter. It's a win-win. We're trying to help those seniors.
And the funds to get the plumber or the AC fella to turn these things on, do those funds then come from the board? The board has raised funds for that?
So it depends on the service, because the board, if there are certain things that APS is able to provide, there's certain things I know, like doctor's visits, that unfortunately the board is not able, I'm sorry, APS is not able to pay for. So the board will supplement whatever APS can pay for, they pay for, and then the board is there to make sure, because there are certain things that they are not able to cover, but this elderly individual really needs. I know we were able to provide a chair. It was just a reclining chair that this individual needed, which is a great thing. You're elderly, you want to stay in the home, but you need little things like that. So that way we can keep them in the home. So that way I know APS filters the call, and anything that they're not able to provide, they send it to the board to see if we're able to cover that expense.
I think that's great. I think that it's important for people in a community, any community, know that there are organizations that are looking out for the welfare for people who can't provide for themselves. And there's no shame in asking for help, and it's even better offering help. I think it's a lot easier to offer help to someone than to have them have to ask for help. It's just a psychological thing, I think.
And on that note, Bob, a lot of individuals have a bad stigma about adult protective services. You know, they think we're bad. They think we just, literally every case, we get them out of their home and throw them in a nursing home and throw the key away. That's not our goal.
No, and we're going to get, I'm glad you brought that up, because Magda's going to talk about all of the protections that they're afforded, and the fact that they're given an attorney and everything goes to court. And now I understand there are emergency removals that she'll talk about also, but there are safety provisions there. I did have another question about you saying you call people and they say, I don't have money for a plumber. Now, I'm a lawyer. I've been doing this for a long time, so you get a little skeptical about a lot of things. Do you check to see if they don't? Or if somebody says, I don't have money for a plumber, you just make the arrangements for somebody to go out there?
Bottom line is, if you tell me that there's a problem, there's a need, during that conversation, they'll sit there and they'll tell you, I've been ill and I'm just even having a hard time getting in the shower. Little conversation. That's still neglect. We'll call it in. It's up to the investigator to go out there, do a safety assessment, and ensure that they're fine. And based on that assessment, then we'll figure out what they need.
Let's talk about neglect for a minute, because I think that could scare a lot of people. When you say neglect, really what you're saying is these people are not able to take care of themselves in the way that they should be. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not, you're not making a judgment about them. You use the term neglect because you have to have something to kind of hang the help on, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay.
And individuals, so it's as simple as let's just say medical neglect. Your doctor gave you a new prescription that's $400. What do? I need it. I don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. Well, you actually can call Adult Protective Services. You're neglecting yourself because you're not taking that needed medication.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
It's neglect. And so that's why I want everyone to understand, we're here to help. We want to help. Neglect is something that's very misunderstood in our community. Very misunderstood.
Yeah, well,
I don't have food. That's neglect.
Right. But again, what I want to make clear to everybody listening today, it's not a judgmental thing. It's not like you're shaking your finger at somebody and saying you're neglecting to do X, Y, Z. It's that they can't do it. They can't afford it. They don't know how to do it. They need help accessing resources. That's not a judgmental issue that APS is making. They're simply using a term and saying, we will be able to get you help, or we will try to get you help.
And absolutely, you're hitting the nail on the head.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to do. And so many people don't understand that. We do have a way, and Magda mentioned, we have funding that we will try to help. Bathroom conversions, something that people don't think about. I can't get into the tub like I used to. Well, guess what? Maybe APS can pay for converting your tub into a shower.
Now, none of that, because I really want to get to Magda with the legal end of it, but none of that requires court intervention, right? You make those decisions quote, in-house.
Correct.
Okay. So nobody has to worry if they say to you, I don't have money to pay for my medication, that somebody's going to drag them into court. Or I don't have money to get the air conditioning put on, that somebody's going to drag them into court. Those determinations to help those people are made extrajudicially. The court is not involved.
That is part of what Adult Protective Services does.
Those are the services you
right.
provide.
We want to be able to ensure that they can stay at home, least restrictive, with dignity and respect, and that means making sure you're safe at home.
That's great. Okay, Magda, I want to pull you into this now.
Here we go.
And I know, we had talked before we went on the program. Before Grace got so, and I apologize if I ever refer to you as Gracie, but that's what I think of. Before
okay.
Grace, got so involved with the administration of this, she actually did some court work with you. You were in some cases together where she testified. Explain, first of all, what is least restrictive environment? What does that mean?
So least restrictive, I always think of, can we keep you in your home? Because again, removing somebody from their home is extreme. And I commend Miss Grace, because actually she was the first person I met with APS on my first case, where it was a removal case, and she walked me through it. And I walked into the house, and you see firsthand, can this person stay in this house? Is it a safe environment? Can they provide supports and services? Having a provider there, having a nurse come out, are those things that we can explore to make sure that that would be a least restrictive, keeping them in their home, making sure there's no fire hazards. Can they get around if they're in a wheelchair? Sometimes, unfortunately, we're older, we collect things, there's clutter. So it could be something, let's see if we can just clean the house out so that that individual in the wheelchair can move around. Little things like that, least restrictive, where we're allowing that elderly person to stay in the home.
And also, I think people need to realize that a lot of times the people that APS is dealing with, not all the time, but they may have the beginnings of dementia, they may have full-fledged dementia, they may have Alzheimer's. It's very scary for them because they don't have an anchor. They're just not relating to the world in a rational way. So it's got to be very scary to be picked up and moved out of the environment that you're used to, even if that environment is not particularly healthy for you. But in some cases, it has to be done. So would you explain what an emergency removal is?
Sure, and I'll actually use that first case I was involved in. It was very much a necessity for removal, and it was a house that was not livable. This individual, unfortunately, was in a wheelchair, and I was surprised that they had been living in this environment for so long. It was unsafe. If there was a fire, it was impossible to walk around, and it was an environment that individual had to be taken out because they could fall, anything like that. So that's kind of what you're looking for when you walk into the house. Dementia, because unfortunately, it's very hard, very scary when we're dealing with that illness. And when we have that, the individual doesn't know what's going on, leaving the stove. And if we have so much clutter and we're unfortunately not seeing the doctor, anything can happen. And I think that was a danger, that very much the stove was on fire. This person could get stuck in that home, and there's really no way to get out because they're in that wheelchair. That was very much a, please remove this person immediately.
Every once in a while, I'll leave the stove on and I go, oh my God, APS. But I have found, when I used to do this work, when I was an ad litem like you've been, I'd often found it was very traumatic in the beginning when a person was removed. Once they were removed and put in the environment that was beneficial to them, they were happy as a clam. I mean, they never knew that their life could be that good at that point. And I think that's important for people to understand. But what happens, and either of you can answer this because I don't know who to ask it to, what happens when the APS worker knocks on the door and they won't let them in?
We can't go in. We have to have permission by law.
But what happens then? What is the process after that?
You know, our staff have great support, and it's not just one person making the final decision. There's so many people that have to give the okay. So that individual, that staff member, has to go to the supervisor. We have subject matter experts. That case will be staffed with those individuals. It'll be staffed with our program administrator, and everybody will decide and make a final decision before we even contact our attorneys. And we finally tell them what's going on. What do we think we should do? If anybody during that circle says, no, get some more evidence, then we got to go back and get more. Only because we don't want to go before the courts not knowing that we tried everything
Right.
prior to removing them. We got to make least restrictive steps first.
Right, and I think, again, Magda went through that. You're talking about it again. I think it's comforting for the public to know that that's what you aim for. You aim to leave the person in their house. You aim to have them in the least restrictive environment. You aim to let them continue to make their own decisions if it's possible. But now we're talking about the hard cases. So you can't get in, you have somebody, they've been reported. Is that what an emergency removal is? Is they say, we're not letting you in and we're not getting out.
We need to see the environment. We need to really determine, are you able to make decisions or not at that moment?
So do you file with the court to get into their house?
Yes, we can do a forced entry, but
Okay.
we have to have evidence.
Right,
we have to
right.
show, what do we see? Do we see weeds, a foot high? When you open the door, what is it that you're smelling? How does that individual look when they're looking at you through the door? Are they disheveled? Are they full of urine and feces? Something's going on. We got to have that proof. Again, as adults, we all have rights. We all can live a certain way up to the point that you're endangering yourself.
Right.
And so we have to prove it. We have to show it. It's not just because I feel it. No, we got to show it.
And then going back to the ad litem for a minute, really, in this situation, correct me if I'm wrong, but really in this situation, you're required to advocate for what your client wants. Is that correct?
100%.
Yeah.
So even though I can see that this person definitely probably needs that help, if the individual I'm representing wants to stay home, my job is to advocate for them 100%. And that's where, of course, we make sure, just like Ms. Grace was saying, they go to court and they make sure they have the evidence, because I'm countering that evidence.
Right.
And if they're not able to prove their case, then my individual gets to stay home. And that's where I think it comes a lot from the community as well, because sometimes I may not be able to get into the home right away, but a neighbor sees something. Of course, everything I know is anonymous reports. And so that way they're making sure that that individual is taken care of. And the removal is so extreme because everybody's put into place. We all have jobs, and of course the ad litem, my job is to advocate for that individual. Even though they may be showing signs of dementia, so they may not fully understand why they need that help, and so they want to stay home. And of course, I have to advocate for that no matter what.
Yeah. You said something, it went in one ear and not in one ear and out the other. It went into my head, and I said, I have to ask Magda follow up, and I totally forgot what it is. So I'll jump back to that. I do remember. It was the anonymity, which is very important, because people are reticent to report something like this. I mean, we're always told if you see something wrong, you need to report it. Child abuse, elder abuse, but it's difficult to do. But here you can do it under the cloak of anonymity, correct?
Correct.
And even when you go to court, you as the ad litem for the individual can't demand to know who made that report. Is that correct?
Correct. So even though we'll see the status, what was done, why the report was made, we have no information on the caller, who made the report, because of course I think that makes sure that we want to protect the person making the report. We also want to encourage individuals to make those reports, because without those reporters, so much is not seen, because they're the eyes and ears of the community.
And I think that it's important for lawyers to look into that. It's important for doctors, important for bankers. Now, I don't know those particular laws. And I don't know, for example, if a banker, we're talking about exploitation now. Somebody takes an older person to the bank and all of a sudden they're going every week, and the older person is writing $1,000 check every week to the person who's taking them. You might know, but can the banker report that, or is there some sort of privacy issue about the account?
No, there was a Senate bill that was passed 2 years ago, maybe 3, where now banks are mandated and they're trained to look for these signs. And so if they see seniors, people, older adults, they're very much into routines. They have a routine about their funding,
Right.
and how they pay their bills, what money they take out, how much they save. So banks are now looking out for strange things, strange activities in their accounts, and they can report it.
Perfect.
Bank tellers are now trained to look out for, all of a sudden, this lady is in front of me and there's someone with them telling her, you need to take out $500. Let's withdraw. And then she says, give me 100. No, I told you 500. Well, they're going to report.
And how do you report?
So in order to receive a case at Adult Protective Services, you have to call the 1-800 number.
So that's down in Austin?
That's down in Austin.
Okay.
Statewide intake, you'll call 1-800-252-5400. And you're going to call and give them as much information as you can. Name, address, and estimated age, what you saw, what really happened. Be as detailed as possible. That helps us figure out what's really happening. But you can also go through the website, which is www.texasabusehotline.org.
Well, and I know all agencies like this are overwhelmed, but what is the response time to something like that?
So if you do it online, it's going to take 24 hours for that case to come through.
Right.
If you call, and based on your details, they will prioritize it in statewide intake. And again, if you're very detailed and you're saying something really, really bad, they will send it off right away. I'm not supposed to say this, but we never close.
Right.
So they'll call us.
Yeah.
They'll call us in the middle of the night. They'll call us on a Sunday, on a Saturday. We always have someone on call.
And then so if you get that call, you send somebody out immediately.
As soon as we get that call, it's assigned to you if you're on call, or at night or during the
Right.
weekend, and then you start working on that case as soon as you can.
Okay. Magda, how many courts do the APS removal hearings?
So we have 2 courts. We have Judge Gamboa and Judge Patricia Chu. So both probate courts handle the removals.
So that's where the removals are always.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're very blessed because both courts are excellent. They work. They know that these cases are super important, so they take priority over
Yeah, and
everything.
they're both very caring with the individual who comes because they understand it's a scary situation. Listen, we could talk about this for 3 or 4 more hours, I'm sure. And I mean, it's fascinating, but even more so, it's important to get this information out. People should not be afraid to use APS as a resource if they think that there is something that can be done for an individual person they're concerned about. We're going to have one of the judges that Magda mentioned to come in and speak more about the removal process and how APS works with the courts. Give your phone number once more.
So if you'd like to register for the conference,
Right.
it's 915-834-5743. Provide them an email. My number is 915-834-5772.
Say that again.
915-834-5772. I'm always welcome anybody to call if they have any questions. I'm truly a servant of the community. I believe in this agency. And that's why I've been here for 17 years. I want to be a voice for those individuals who need it because they don't have a voice sometimes. So I ask everybody, please call me. I'm there for you.
That's great. Well, thank you both for coming today, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you.
And thank you for being with us today.